بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. Ibn Ata'illah says أنت إلى حلمه إذا أطعته أحوج منك إلى حلمه إذا عصيته. We haven't done this one before, we? You know this? Okay. أنت إلى حلمه إذا أطعته أحوج منك إلى حلمه إذا عصيته. Which means, now see what you think when you listen to this and see if you can understand this. You're going to need to be really awake, and you're going to have all of that white matter in your head working, right? Those neurons firing to understand this. And what would help is to have a heart, right? I mean, everybody's saying we have a heart, right? That's how we survive. But this, Ibn Ata'illah is saying, you are more in need in his forbearance. Forbearance, hilm, forbearance. What is forbearance?
Tolerance.
A tolerance of some kind, right? Which means that you're able to bear a lot. La halima illa dhu atharatin. The person who's been through a lot and he understands that there are difficulties, right? Then when somebody makes a mistake, they don't jump to conclusions, they're not quick to punish. They have a much higher tolerance level because they understand, as compassion comes in there. So there is nobody more halim than Allah, because He even gives to eat and drink and nourishes and sustains even those that deny Him, right? And so much we do and He doesn't seize us, right? So that's what you call halim, that's Allah. So you are more in need in His forbearance, meaning you're more in need of His forbearance when you obey Him than you are when you disobey Him. You know, when we disobey Allah, we're definitely going to need His forbearance. That's quite clear. Everybody knows that. But He's saying that when you obey Him, you need His forbearance more than you would when you disobey Him. Does that sound even right? Do you understand? How is that even possible? Is that even a question? I mean, it's like a no-brainer, isn't it? When I disobey Him, I want His forbearance, otherwise I'm in trouble. I'm obeying Him, why should I need His forbearance? But as I said last week, that many of these aphorisms in here, some of them, I would grade the aphorism in here in three categories. Some of them are very straightforward, very clear realities. The second type are of this type, where they take you a notch higher than our understanding. We have a certain understanding about our worship to Allah, like last week, about the dua. But He takes us to give you an understanding of the arif. So you get a much better understanding, and thus our deeds become much more enriched. So it refines your understanding of Allah and our relationship to Him. And the third category of them you'll see are highly complex, they're more experiential. You have to experience them to even get them. Otherwise they are of the higher realm. I haven't dealt with any of them here, right? Because they're well beyond. You have to experience them, otherwise you just deny them. You're just like, oh, what does that mean? But these are very, very useful because they help us to refine our understanding of who Allah is and how our worship should be. So now listen to this. I mean, in a nutshell, the answer is this. When a person worships Allah, you have a feeling of satisfaction, accomplishment, elation. And a lot of the time that could lead us to becoming ostentatious, feeling safe. I am a pious man. I am righteous. I have taqwa. You become complacent. These are all the pitfalls of that side of things. And that is much more likely to happen than if we were to disobey Allah. When a person disobeys Allah, a person with Iman, if he disobeys Allah, he's going to feel guilty. Guilt generally follows disobedience. At the heat of the moment, we do a disobedience, go to the website that we're not supposed to go to, speak to someone we're not supposed to speak to, listen to something we're not supposed to, smoke something that we're not supposed to, at the heat of the moment. Maybe because of peer pressure, wrong company, we have to get rid of all of these asbab as such, right? If we don't, then only blame yourself. Heat of the moment you did, but immediately afterwards, the anticlimax is going to be guilt. So what do you generally do? If you have discernment in your heart and your concern, you will make tawbah. Whereas when you've done a good deed, then you think you're on top of the world, I don't need to do any more. This is, in a nutshell, this is exactly what he's going to say. The excellence and loftiness of the servant are in his awareness that the actual goal of all worship is only Allah Most High. Any worship should only be Allah, not any kind of accomplishment on our behalf. At all times and in all acts, his gaze must remain focused on Allah Most High. As a beggar might solicit food from his benefactor. I don't know, we don't see too many beggars except some homeless people out here. But they will come to you over and over again. Even if you swear at them, they'll come the next day because their state is such, they're in so much need that censoring them, having been told off before, doesn't affect them because they're just so... There's one guy, you said you're going to help me. I beg you. And he says that each time, even though he knows, you haven't given it to him the last 5 times. There's still a shred of hope generally because of their addiction. They will stoop to lows. This is what addiction does to you. There's one guy that I know, may Allah preserve him now. He's a Maulana as well. He studied. He got into gambling. Gambling is worse than drugs and all of this because with drugs, with cigarettes, with all of this other stuff, you can smell it, you can notice it. But gambling is silent. You just lose money. He told me a story. He said, you know how bad it had become that finally he had to be divorced. His wife couldn't stand him. She tried, she supported him, everything. She would give him money to go and buy milk. How much money? £1. And he would go out with all intention of buying milk from local Tesco, Sainsbury's, whatever. He would see the betting shop, and there's one on, and your Newham has probably the highest, And have you noticed that there's 2 and 1 in front and another one? Is because they can only have certain slot machines in each one. So they know they'll make the money, so they just get another one, they get another one. These are like empty shops, right? There's not much going on in them. Crazy thing. So he would see one of them and the addiction kicks in. He goes in, spends that £1 in there, and now what's he going to do? He's supposed to buy milk. Comes out, goes home and makes a stupid lie. I dropped it in the drain. Like a kid, like a child of 7-year-old, 6-year-old, the kind of excuses they would make up. He told me that's the kind of excuses I would be making up. What else am I going to say? He knows that they know that he is making something up, but he would still say that. That's what you call desperation, addiction. You are helpless. If there's anything that we need to be addicted to is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there's anything that we need to give ourselves up for, that somebody calls you crazy, constantly be remembering Allah, is Allah. That's it. So what he's saying here is that so I'm trying to say, as a beggar might solicit food from his benefactor, that benefactor, the supposed benefactor, the one he thinks is going to give him something, may even abuse him. Now Allah doesn't do that. But in the world, the slaves, the beggars, this is what they may experience from the people they want, but they still go. His actions, deeds, and even his existence are completely out of his sight when in this excellent spiritual state. His reliance is only on Allah Most High. The heart derives solace from only Him, and the direction of his heart is only focused on Him. There remains absolutely no trust in one's efforts and plans. The contemptibility and destruction of the servant are brought about when his attention turned to his ego. As long as you're in a state of servitude to Allah and in a state of need, you are safe, because you are in a very secure place. But as soon as it turns to our ego, Allahumma la takilna ila anfusina tarfata ayn. What is that dua for? Don't consign ourselves to our own selves for even the blink of an eye, because we cannot be trusted. And he becomes pleased with his deeds, as though he is in reality responsible for their creation, meaning he is the one who achieved this, and where he begins to value himself. When the servant develops this disposition, he is expelled from the divine court and he becomes accursed. He's become independent. Now understand that when the servant sins, he is in need of Allah's kindness, for if he is denied divine kindness, Allah's punishment will overtake him. He therefore requests divine kindness to avoid being apprehended and to secure pardon for his sins. Since obedience and worship are in fact divine pleasure, the issue of kindness does not arise in the servant's mind. I'm doing something to worship Allah, why should I worry about his kindness here? I'm doing something here. That's what comes in our mind. That comes in the premature mind, the premature believer's mind. Kindness is perceived as necessary when an act is rendered in conflict with divine pleasure. However, very often the opposite should occur to the servant, meaning the need for divine kindness at the time of obedience is greater than at the time of the sin. So this is the paradox he's going to explain now. The explanation of this paradoxical claim is as follows. It is the natural disposition of the believer to be raked by remorse after commission of a sin. It's a natural state. He becomes overwhelmed by regret, grief and self-contempt. He despises and detests his own self. He gains greater humility. He hastens to supplicate for forgiveness in the divine court. In this pitiful state, his gaze is not on his effort and deed of repentance. The attitude of complete dependence on Allah's kindness becomes ingrained in his heart. He just wants Allah's kindness. Oh Allah, you know that I am a weak one. And if you read those Hassan Basri's 70 istighfar, they tell you what a believer's sentiment should be. Oh Allah, I committed this sin. You did not reveal it to anybody. I became more emboldened because you maintained the respect that I had among people. I didn't fall down in people's eyes, though I'm doing this secretly. So then I did it again based on my false impression of your mercy. Oh Allah, forgive me for this sin. So, in this pitiful state, his gaze is not on his own effort and deed of repentance. The attitude of complete dependence on Allah's kindness becomes ingrained in his heart. He is fully aware that apart from Allah's grace, mercy and kindness, there is no other refuge for him. This attribute that he has subsequently developed is the objective that he is supposed to cultivate as the state of excellence as a believer. On the other hand, sometimes after obedience and worship, the servant's gaze falls on his own deeds. He becomes vain, considering himself an obedient servant and a pious worshipper. He's floating in the air sometimes. He feels that he has discharged Allah's rights. Hence, he believes that he must be rewarded as though his worship was characterized by excellence. In this state, his gaze is on his own effort and he ceases to rely on Allah's grace and mercy. Therefore, it will not be surprising if Allah's wrath settles on him on account of his vanity and pride, and he thus becomes the object of divine displeasure. On the occasion of this type of obedience, the servant is in greater need of divine kindness than his need at the time of sinning. Now, who would think of that? Except somebody who really has got to the depth of this thing. And that's why we learn from these people, because many of us are probably never going to get this in our mind for ourselves. It's only people who Allah opened it up to, gave him tawfiq to open it up to others, and thus we benefit from that. Just to complete that, there's another one, which is لا تطلب. I'm not sure if you've done this one. لا تطلب عوضا عن عمل لست له فاعلا يكفي من الجزاء لك على العمل أن كان له قابلا. This one is simple, but again, it refines your understanding of why you need to do worship. Do not seek recompense for a deed whose doer was not you. You got up, mashallah, last night for tahajjud. Tomorrow's Friday. So you did tahajjud tonight. It's Thursday today, you fasted. So you suddenly think, I must get reward for this. And yeah, we're going to get reward for it. But I must get reward, I did this. He's saying that, how can you seek a reward for this? You didn't even do it. It was Allah who got you to do it, who gave you the ability to do it. لَسْتَ لَهُ فَاعِلٍ. It suffices you as a recompense for the deed that He just accepts it. That is more than enough that He accepts it. That should be enough of the reward. Meaning, obviously if He accepts something, He's going to reward you. That's Allah for you, right? He's Shakir. But our focus should not be the reward. Our focus should just be that Alhamdulillah, He's accepted and I've been able to be a servant. Now you might be thinking, but in the Quran, in the Hadith, there are so many Hadith and verses that say, do this and you get this much reward, do this, you get this much. The whole focus is reward, 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 reward. So why is that? So why do some of the ulama say that you must focus just on obedience, servitude, and not on the reward? Not just on paradise and hell, but just about making Allah happy. So all of these ahadith, what are they talking about? Well, because the majority of people, they need the carrot. They need these incentives to get on the path. And yes, they will happen. But the more refined understanding is when you look deeper in the verses, in the second tier of understanding, is when you start understanding the real reason you do these things. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way it is. That's why the majority of hujjaj, proofs in the Quran, are plausible proofs, let me not go into this, not definitive proofs. They're dalil, they're not dalil qat'i, they're dalil iqna'i. Because for the majority of people, that's what works. They just want straightforward, simple dalail from the universe, cosmos. Look at this is what, and they establish Allah in your hearts. Anyway, that's a different point. So it should be understood that Allah is the true doer of all actions, because He is the creator of our actions. We are just we just have the free will that acquires these actions. We embark on these actions, but Allah is the one who actually enables us. Because if you think about it, how many people we have here? About 30 people, right? Out of the thousands or million Muslims in London, right? This madrasa was set up here by Maulana Anas Mufti Sadr, and Allah gave them some ajib tawfiq to do this. And then He gave you guys the ajib tawfiq to be here rather than somewhere else. I'm sure many of you are working, many of you are studying, many of you could have done so many other things at this time, giving so much sacrifice from families. But there's a divine enablement, isn't there? Recognize that divine enablement and thank Allah for it and try to do shukr for it. That's what this is about. So he should understand that Allah Most High has created the act of worship on him and that it is His favor. Since the servant is not the creator of his good deeds, it is highly improper for him to desire compensation as though it is his right. Therefore, if he is only in the pursuit of reward, a perfected sincerity will be negated. So, you can have the intention of reward as well, but your main focus. In fact, the servant deserves to be apprehended on account of his deficiency. And we have the famous story about the hereafter. This person comes, he's very thirsty, cup of water for half of your deeds, second cup of water for the rest of your deeds, gets thirsty again, no more deeds left, now what? So that's why the hadith mentions that everybody who enters paradise will enter by the grace of Allah, not by his actions. That is taking you to the second tier, right? That is taking you to the second tier. Otherwise, do this and you'll go in Jannah. Do this, you'll go in Jannah. But then why this? By the grace. That's telling you about something much more refined. May Allah give us the tawfiq. Alhamdulillah.